Should you be buying the DJI Pocket 2, simply use your cell phone, or buy a bigger camera like a mirrorless? Matti Haapoja also frames this question quite well.
Honestly, my first reaction was kind of like, do we really need another budget, smaller camera?
The answer for me is yes, definitely. Even though I think that image quality, sound, and ease of use are super important, I think that many reviewers like Matti Haapoja forgot to mention some of the features and accessories that are the most awesome inside of the DJI Pocket 2. Let's get right into it. For those of you who are new to this channel, I'm Bellemare-Alford, a young photographer and filmmaker on the journey to become better at this art. 2 weeks ago, I published my review of the DJI Pocket 2, my favorite small camera. This is totally unrelated, but look at how awesome the view is right now. Let's start by talking about image quality. If you're like me and image quality isn't the most important part of a camera, you can go check out the chapters below because I cover a lot more than just image quality inside of this video. If you compare this to a more complete vlogging setup like the Canon R5 or the Sony a7S III, it's for sure not going to have as good image quality. And this is just because the tiny sensors inside of the DJI Pocket 2 cannot compete with a full frame sensor inside of the bigger cameras. It's also impossible right now with the computational power we have to compete with computational photography on every single frame inside a video like we can do when using photo modes inside of the Google Pixel 4a or the iPhone. Talking of the iPhone, the image quality seems to be very similar between the iPhone and the DJI Pocket 2 with a slight advantage with the DJI Pocket 2. I don't own an iPhone 12 Pro, so you can go check out the video from Matti Haapoja for some test footage if you want to compare that. I will be comparing the footage with my Google Pixel 4a, and one thing I want to clarify is that the DJI Pocket 2 will be getting HDR video, but it's not here yet, so we have to wait for the firmware update to be able to test it. One thing I found weird is that most reviewers in North America seem to forget that Apple isn't the leading brand throughout the world. It actually only has 15% when you consider the whole world, but I can understand they get mixed up because in North America, it has over 50%. This means that it's fair to assume that most people are probably using an Android phone, and Android usually doesn't have as good video quality as the iPhone, with a few exceptions from high-end phones from Samsung, Xiaomi, or Huawei. I filmed a bunch of test footage using my Google Pixel 4a and the DJI Pocket 2, and the video from the DJI Pocket 2 consistently came out as better video. If we look at the images from the Google Pixel 4a, we can see that the images are completely over-sharpened. This isn't a problem only with the Google Pixel 4a. Most smartphones tend to over-sharpen the images like crazy, which is really annoying. The DJI Pocket 2 offers a lot more natural images, and if we look at the example here, we can see that the branches look sharp but are still very natural. If we look on the image from the Google Pixel 4a, we can see that it looks like a total mess in the end. The colors are very saturated inside of the image of the Google Pixel 4a, and when you look at the pictures from the DJI Pocket 2, you can see that it's a lot more naturals in terms of colors. It's not necessarily a bad thing for the Google Pixel 4a, but it allows to get a little bit more professional images when you use the DJI Pocket 2 with the default picture profile. Another huge difference between these two cameras is actually the stabilization. So the DJI Pocket 2 uses the gimbal to compensate for the movement, where most smartphones actually use a mix of in-body and digital stabilization. The problem with the method that the smartphone uses is actually that it creates weird distortions inside of the images sometimes, and it also needs to crop inside to get more detail inside of the shot, so you're losing some of the resolution from the sensor when they're doing this. So overall, it's just a lot better stabilization you get from the DJI Pocket 2 compared to any smartphone technology. In my review of the DJI Pocket 2, I mentioned that low-light capabilities were better, but I didn't really realize how much better they became. If we compare the shot of my dog walking in total pitch dark, we can still see some detail inside the image of the DJI Pocket 2, and we can even see the trees in the background. If we look at the image from the Google Pixel 4a, we just don't see anything at all in that shot, and that just shows how much detail is retained inside of the DJI Pocket 2. This might be a little bit extreme as an example, so let's go see some other test footage I took with the Christmas lights, and we can still see that here the DJI Pocket 2 still has more detail in every single shot. Another big problem with the Google Pixel 4a is that there's way too much noise and you lose all the detail and the sharpness in the shots where it doesn't seem to be able to use the autofocus correctly. If we look at this precise shot of the Christmas lights and the trees, we can see that on the DJI Pocket 2, we still have detail inside of the snow, and we can even see the branches in the background, which is very impressive when you compare it to the Google Pixel 4a, where everything is just black in the end. I did an ISO test on the DJI Pocket 2, and it's very impressive to see that from ISO 100 to 1600, the image is super clean. And this shows that a bigger sensor inside of the DJI Pocket 2 compared to most smartphone cameras actually really helps gather more light and create a cleaner image. For me, image quality isn't the most important thing, so let's go see what is. When starting in filmmaking, most people won't realize, at least I didn't realize when I started, how important sound is. People are not going to stick around for a video that has 8K but great sound, but will stick around if you have a 480p video that has great sound. The DJI Creator Combo Kit includes this small wireless microphone, which is super useful. I won't go into much details because I talked about it inside of my review, but two things that most reviewers forgot to mention is that this allows you to connect an external microphone inside of it, and you can also use the button on the side as a wireless controller. It's super useful because, for example, right now the shot I'm getting wouldn't be possible if I was using only the audio from my phone. The audio you're hearing right now is from my phone and it's pretty bad. And if we come back to the wireless microphone, we can see that the audio is a lot better. Yes, I could buy the Rode Wireless Go microphone, but at half the price of the DJI Creator Combo Kit, it's way too expensive. One of my favorite features on the DJI Pocket 2 is Active Track. If you don't know what's Active Track, you can select the subject on the screen of the camera or on your cell phone, and the camera will automatically follow it afterwards. This is super useful as a one-man band filmmaker because it makes it look like if you have a cameraman or even if you're alone. This simply doesn't work on a cell phone camera because you need a gimbal that is turning around to follow the subject to have it work. One thing I will notice is that the new version of Active Track isn't as good as the old version, where it's a lot more choppy now. I really hope they fix this in a firmware update because this is such a useful feature. My favorite feature of the DJI Pocket 2 is the DJI Mimo app that allows full wireless control of the camera. You can use the app to get more creative shots by moving the gimbal, or you can use it to access every single setting of the camera in a more intuitive interface. I use this all the time when I'm getting B-roll of myself, where I place down the camera on a tripod, walk away, open the app, frame my shot, start recording, stop recording, and then review the footage, all of that without having to touch the camera a single time. If I try doing the same B-roll shot using my cell phone, I actually have to place down the cell phone, start recording, walk away, then come back, review the footage, start all over again because most of the time the framing isn't good. This is a small feature, but it's actually one that saves so much time when you're alone and you don't have a second person to check all the time that your framing is right, and you can just do it wirelessly using your cell phone. The DJI Pocket 2 even becomes better if you're planning on doing some vlogging type shots. With its front-facing screen, you can actually see your framing, and it also has Active Track that allows you to track your face and make sure it's always centered inside of their frame. If you want to get the best image quality out of your cell phone, you actually need to use your rear-facing cameras, and this is kind of ironic because you cannot use anymore the screen to see what you're filming. So you can see that the DJI Pocket 2 was designed with content creator in mind and just creates a whole better experience when you have to get some vlogging type shots. Most of the reviewers that didn't use the original DJI Osmo Pocket seem to have not realized that there's a Pro mode on the DJI Pocket 2. You can also add ND filters that clip on the lens using magnets, which is super useful. I have the Polar Pro standard filters that are great quality and don't have any color cast. using an ND filter, and the Pro mode allows you to set your frame rate to 24 frames per second and set your shutter speed to 1/50th of a second. This is great to respect the rule of double your frame rate to get natural motion blur. You could use a more professional camera app on your phone like Filmic Pro to get access to all these settings, but I didn't see a huge difference in image quality between the default camera app and using Filmic Pro. There's also a huge downside, is that you don't get access to some of the most useful features from the default camera app. For example, on the Google Pixel 4a, you don't have access to the digital stabilization from the default app, and on the iPhone, you don't have access to the stabilization and also the HDR mode, which is a pretty big problem. All of this to say that the DJI Pocket 2 allows you to have access to more professional settings without having to sacrifice any of your shooting modes. The reason I use the DJI Pocket 2 instead of using my DSLR is its portability and ease of use. If I want to get a shot, I simply have to power on the device, and within a second I'm ready to start recording by pressing the record button. If I want to place the camera on any surface, I can use the included tripod in the Creator Combo Kit to place it wherever. If I want to use my DSLR, I actually have to take it out of my bag, then set up the tripod, then set a few settings inside of the camera, and then I can start recording, which is just a lot longer and more painful to do. The DJI Pocket 2 also allows me to carry it with me all the time. It actually fits in most of the pockets of my coats or in some of the pockets of my pants, and that means that I just have it on me, and if I want to get a shot, I know I can get it really fast and I have the camera with me, which just means I get more creative shots in the end. The other thing with the DJI Pocket 2 is that you have so many modes, so you have slow motion, hyperlapses, motion lapses, time lapses, and many more. They're not the greatest quality, but they all allow to either take raw pictures or use a decent-like picture profile to get more control of the shots in post-processing. I will agree that the advantage of a phone here is that you have it on you all the time, but the disadvantage is that you're stuck with the default settings inside of your camera app. Oh, I almost forgot this point also, and it's that it's a lot less awkward to use inside of a public space. So if you're like me and don't really like vlogging in public, this is a great camera because it's a lot smaller. Another advantage of having a small camera is that if you go in a place where you're not supposed to use pro cameras without a permit, you're probably going to be able to film with this small camera, where you won't be able if you have a DSLR or mirrorless, because it's going to be considered to be pro cameras, but this one won't probably because they probably don't even know that it's a camera. Before letting you know which camera you should be buying, I want to talk about the prices. It's pretty obvious that the DJI Pocket 2 is a lot less expensive than a DSLR or a mirrorless that can easily cost between $3,000 to $5,000. The DJI Pocket 2 Creator Combo Kit costs $499 US, and if you decide to add to that a phone like the Google Pixel 4a at $350, you get a kit where you have really good pictures from the phone and a very versatile video camera. If you compare this to the $999 price tag of the iPhone 12 Pro, you can see that it's a lot cheaper to get this, and you have a lot more features inside of the DJI Pocket 2 than just buying the iPhone. Now, which camera should you buy? If you want the best image quality, don't really mind having a bigger camera, and also have a pretty big budget, in that case buying a mirrorless camera like the Sony a7S III or the Canon R5 is probably the best option for you. I still use my DSLR a lot when I want a shallow depth of field, better control on the image, or incredible autofocus. But I'm a big believer that the best camera you can have is the one you have on you. And in that case, if you already have a cell phone that can shoot in HD, it's probably more than enough if you're getting started in filmmaking or YouTube. I started filming using a film camera that had totally terrible image quality, but it still allowed me to learn a lot about filmmaking. If you really want to upgrade your game a little bit, but don't want to spend a lot of money on a camera, I would suggest just start by upgrading your audio, because that's probably the most important thing to upgrade if you already have a cell phone that can shoot in HD. If you want to step up your video production game and want to get more creative and better quality shot than what your smartphone offers, the DJI Pocket 2 is the right camera for you. I also think it's a great camera if you're starting out on YouTube or starting out in filmmaking. It offers features that rivals much more expensive cameras, and with the Creator Combo Kit, you get pretty much everything you need to get started without having to buy anything else. The only thing I would buy in extra are ND filters that really help to step up your game. I also think the DJI Pocket 2 is a great camera if you travel a lot. I bought the original version, the DJI Osmo Pocket, when I left from Montreal to go to Vancouver for 8 months. I wanted something that was small, portable, and still offered great image quality to document my trip. I ended up bringing the DJI Osmo Pocket on pretty much any adventure, whether it was skiing, hiking, biking, walking, pretty much anything outside of my house. I think it's important to understand this. Like the name suggests, it's a pocket-sized camera. It doesn't try to be the best camera available, but it tries to pack the most features and quality inside the smallest package possible. And that's why I think it's one of the most versatile small cameras. I hope this video helped you understand why I love so much the DJI Pocket 2 and use it in every single of my videos. I also want to give a huge shout out to Matti Haapoja, and I'm going to link his review down below that inspired me to make this video. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like below. It really does help the channel. Also, don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button to learn when I have a new video that comes out. See you in the next one. Bye bye.